The president and other executive branch officials now have a say in regulations in the Fed issues. Chair Walsh, should those officials be prohibited from owning any businesses where they have a role in regulating them, whether it is crypto company or bank or anything else? Yes or no?
So, Ranking Member Waters, I don't mean to disappoint you, but we're going to stay in our lane at the Federal Reserve. The more we stay in our lane, the more we stay out of politics. The rules and obligations for others outside the Federal Reserve are not something at which I feel it's appropriate for me to opine.
I have here President Trump's most recent financial disclosure, which shows that Trump made billions of dollars in the first year of his presidency, the bulk of which came from his family's crypto businesses, all while he is responsible for overseeing the agencies regulating crypto. This is an egregious conflict of interest, and Congress must put an end to it. Now, I want to just show you, in case you haven't had time to look yet, that this is the president's
How you doing, everybody? Welcome.
of his financial interests. He had, this is, how many pages? 900. This is 900 pages of financial interest. When you have time, I want you to go through them so that you'll know and understand.
Drop a like, everybody.
Exactly
Welcome,
what
everybody.
I'm talking
Welcome.
about.
This is big
So,
stuff.
let me ask you, do you believe we must put an end to it?
Ranking Member, you've given us a big job. We've begun in 6 short weeks to tackle the big job, and I'm focused on that.
Well, let me just go further with the prediction markets. I'm deeply concerned by the potential for regulators to profit from the use of material non-public information on prediction markets. There's a pattern of insiders appearing to profit ahead of market-moving Trump administration decisions, like when officials with close ties to the administration make trades prior to major tariff announcements. Chair Walsh, what oversight does the Fed conduct over its employees with regard to insider trading? And given the rise of prediction markets, is the Fed increasing its oversight for its employees profiting from the use of material nonprofit information?
Ranking Member, at the end of my very first week on the job, I sent a letter to the 23,000 employees of the Fed, reminding them the best of the Fed's traditions, which is our culture. And included in that culture is integrity. Included in that culture is ensuring that we abide by the law and the very highest standards. That's a commitment that we've made to each other and will make to you.
Well, thank you. Chair Walsh, in 2019, I posed a simple question to former Chair Powell. I asked, if you get a call from the president and he said, I'm firing you, pack up and it's time to go, what would you do? Chair Powell said, of course, I would not do that. The answer would be no.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
I asked further, he does not want me to go any further. Do you think the president doesn't have the authority?
He can answer that answer. He can give you an answer in writing, and I'm sure he will do that in a timely way. Thank you so much. The chair recognizes the chair of our Task Force Monetary Policy, Mr. Lucas of Oklahoma. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, I want to start off discussing these task forces you've created. Clearly, Chairman Hill's Monetary Policy Task Force idea is catching fire as we see this go across the landscape. What do you anticipate the result of the task forces to be? Can we expect public reports or other documents? How do you envision presenting the results of these findings, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much. Right now, they're in discovery mode. I've given the 5 task forces a tall task to go back to first principles, see what we're doing, see what can be improved upon. They were starting with a blank sheet of paper, and you had a highly credible central bank running the most important monetary policy in the world. What would we do? Are there existing practices we could improve upon? Are there hard questions we could answer? The changes in the economy relevant to that? In terms of disclosure, we're going to make sure that the external independent task forces, which are staffed by some superb Fed staffers, that they get to share their views first with the decision makers. There are going to be 19 of us around the table that are committed to listen to them with an open mind and make decisions. But there's going to be nothing held in secret here. This is a public discussion on these 5, and I'm happy to share the results and the thinking periodically between now and the end of the year, at which point I hope we've got some real conclusions.
Of course, the committee task force is very sensitive on this thing. Let's move to the communications and balance sheet. A concern I raised with your predecessor is the potential for confusion on the purpose of adjustments to the Fed's balance sheet, absent clear and frequent communication. For example, the trading desk announced yesterday it's continuing the $10 billion in bill purchases this period, presumably to maintain ample reserves. I understand not wanting to preempt the work of the communications task force, but can you share your thoughts on balance sheet policy communication? Will you make it clear to the markets when shrinking the balance sheet is intended to tighten monetary policy rather than a deregulatory effort to avoid market distortions?
Yeah. You raise a couple of very good points. First, that some of the boundaries of these task forces will overlap. In some sense, each of the task forces are charged with obligations that are ultimately the FOMC and Board of Governors. So the communications task force and the balance sheet task force, there might be some overlap in their work. But let me cut to the chase. The balance sheet policies since the global financial crisis when I last served, the balance sheet regime has changed quite significantly. The size and duration of assets the Fed's holding have changed massively. They changed first in a period of crisis. That was the design of this new balance sheet policy. I don't want to prejudge decisions that this task force makes, but it's no secret of my long-held views, and I'll just state them 3 ways. One is the balance sheet is part of monetary policy. Monetary policy is made both through interest rates and through the balance sheet policies. The balance sheet isn't merely about plumbing. So that's point 1. Second, I want to assure you that if there were a change in balance sheet policy, that we would preview it, explain it, debate it, and no changes in balance sheet policy would happen without good advance notice to the likes of this committee and broadly financial markets. And 3, as we think about balance sheet policy, we at the Federal Reserve have to do, I think, a strong and compelling job to stay clear of fiscal policy. We want to be out of the fiscal policy business, which is between you and the Treasury Secretary and the President, and focus on monetary policy. Those are among the big questions I've asked this group of 3 distinguished leaders to take on, and I look forward to hearing.
Good morning, everybody. Today, one of the reasons that we're pumping is because inflation falls, which is so cool. So cool. It provides, it basically tells us, hey, there might not be a hike, and that it's so great for us.
How are you thinking about financial stability and the threat of fiscal dominance as Congress fails to get spending under control while the demand for our debt, including the Federal Reserve, continues to change?
So it's an excellent question. As we sit here today, the average duration, that is the average outstanding stock of assets that are held by the Fed and U.S. Treasuries is about 6.5 years. The Treasuries that held in the market are about 4.5 years. I understand in periods of crises, like the 2020 pandemic and the 2008 crisis, central banks by design needing to step into markets to create a fair price. But in more benign times, when our overall holdings are larger than the market, that's something where monetary policy is, in the language of former Chairman Volcker, on the edge of its authority. These are among the questions that this task force will look at.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the ranking member of the House Small Business Committee, Ms. Velasquez of New York, for 5 minutes.
Right here. Welcome to the committee. I would like to start with a straightforward, simple question. Do you work for Donald Trump?
Oh, boy.
Yes or no?
The mic.
If I'm permitted to say, we're an independent central bank. We're honored to be independent. Our independence came from you.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you. What steps would you take if the president or others in the administration target you or your fellow governors because he doesn't like how many of them are voting on interest rate policy?
So it's not my intuition to engage in hypotheticals, but I'll tell you this: the Supreme Court said
that's an easy way out.
The Supreme Court said that the Federal Reserve and the conduct of monetary policy is independent. the extent there were questions about it, the courts answered those questions.
So what would you do?
I would continue to do my job.
Okay, good. Chair Walsh, do you agree that current monetary policy exists in an extremely polarized and politicized environment?
Outside the four walls of the Federal Reserve, there's no doubt a lot of politics. But my goal inside the central bank is for there to be no politics. To the extent there's politics there, we're going to get rid of them.
Well, I, along with many on my side, will say that the attempted firings of a sitting Fed governor and Fed chair in the central bank's 111-year history is quite the politicization and polarization of the Fed. Chair Walsh, at your nomination hearing a few months ago, you said, and I state, I am committed to ensuring that the conduct of monetary policy remains strictly independent. You just said that. Are you still committed to conducting independent monetary policy today?
Absolutely.
Given the current mistrust of government and the political environment surrounding your appointment, the decision to limit communications and offload Fed objectives to clandestine task forces with no clear transparency calls your motivations into question. Can you commit today to institute an explanatory framework that details the reasoning of the Fed's actions following policy changes?
Yeah. I'm here today, Congressman, to do just that. And I think I've demonstrated in my first 6 or 7 weeks in office a commitment to independence and a commitment to reform. Those two are of common importance, and I'm going to deliver on both of them.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Chair Walsh, at your first post-AOMC meeting as chair, you were asked how you intend to handle Fed communications going forward. You answered, and I quote, "We made some changes today. I expect more changes to come, and some of those might well be worthy of a press conference." To me, that is not a very definitive standard. Can you commit today to creating a fixed public standard for which FOMC decisions and procedural changes trigger a press conference rather than deciding case by case which ones might be worth it? Yes or no?
So if I can be a slightly longer than yes or no, the last 63 months, maybe 64 months of high inflation above the Fed's objective suggests that it is immediately important to think about reforms, including in communications, and that's what we're going to do. I don't expect any of the change in communications to be about hiding the ball. The purpose of a change in communications is to do one thing right, which is to get monetary policy right.
I hear you, but are you instituting any standards that will qualify for a press conference as a worth news for the public and hear us in Congress?
So in a word, yes, and we have a task force that's going to help us think about how to do that and do a better job of getting policy right and making sure that you know what we're doing and why.
Can you give me a single objective or criteria right now on how you will determine whether or not a change at the Fed is significant enough for you to hold a press conference on it?
Mr. Chairman, I'd invite you to answer that question in writing, please, for the gentlewoman from New York. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas. Mr. Sessions, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Chairman, welcome. We're delighted that you're here. This is your first time here, but you'll get used to coming back. You'll be here twice a year, so your report to Congress is important, and we do count on the factual nature of that.
Yes.
I'd like to refer, if I can, to 3 questions and allow you to speak instead of myself most of the time. Number 1, housing interest rates, that would be on page 21 and 37. Then understanding better the agricultural stability of that marketplace. I represent a hugely agricultural district. And second, or lastly, the labor market outlook, that's page 16. I'll let the gentleman please move forward, and I'll prompt you now on the first one, housing interest rates. You would please talk
Yes.
to us, your view of that. It's higher than what I want, but you're the person that's in the seat today.
So as I mentioned in my opening statement, prepared remarks, the economy is solid. Financial markets look like they're in very good condition. But when we look at housing markets, the story is much more uneven. 30-year fixed-rate mortgages, which is really the relevance of much of this discussion to a lot of hardworking Americans, it's higher than it's been, and in part, that's because of inflation that has been above the Fed's objectives.
Okay, and looking forward,
so we have
your goal, what can we look at you and say, what is our new chairman going
Want
to
to
do
refine us,
about
man?
that?
Come on.
So he's going to deliver price stability with his colleagues at the FOMC. And what we can
I'm not
do
the only
in
one.
making sure that people are confident that the change in prices is at such a level they don't have to think about it and they don't have to talk about it. That is consistent with long-term Treasury yields being lower, and that's also consistent with mortgages being more affordable.
Well, I agree with that, and I'll look forward to that. Agricultural outlook, as you know, farmers, the farm economy is going through some changes. Your viewpoint on that?
As you know, the Fed does not target particular sectors, but that doesn't mean these sectors aren't incredibly important. The housing economy matters to the economy, the overall economy, and so does the ag economy. It's the breadth and diversity of the U.S. economy that gives it its strength. It's the dynamism of what's happening in each of these sectors, including in agriculture, that gives us great comfort that economic growth can be materially higher than it is. We are not afraid of productivity-led growth, and that's not unique to AI. That's across all sectors of the economy. As I mentioned to Chairman Hill, we're looking for growth to be broader, and the change in prices, the inflation in prices to be more limited. Agriculture is not immune to either of those developments.
Well, the Agriculture Secretary has been added to some of your important committees to make sure there's discussion. I hope that you will listen to her. It is important for you to understand that when people talk about the stock market or investment, farmers and ranchers look out in their backyard at the cost of their equipment, at the cost of their land, at the cost of things. They don't have a stock market. They have their own investment. And I think that the Secretary can be there to completely continue to remind you of that. Labor market outlook really looks good. Page 16, sir, your take.
Yeah, so the labor market has been remarkably resilient. The increase in nominal wages has been solid. You might have heard in my comments at the beginning of this a bit more focus on the price stability part of the mandate. I want you to know, though, that there is no disfavored part of the legislative remit that you gave us. The dual mandate is your word to us that we're going to focus on price stability and on full employment. I intend to do just that, and if I could add one other thing, in my view, the two parts of the mandate are not in conflict. This is not an either-or proposition. The more we can do to deliver low and stable prices, the more we can get it such that people aren't worried about inflation, the more employers are going to want to hire more workers. So you gave us a remit. We take both parts of it seriously. As we look out the window now, the labor markets look to be in pretty good balance. We've got some work to do on the inflation front.
Well, we, in the One Big Beautiful Bill, encourage people to go back to work. And that is why we do not tax overtime pay and why we do not tax what would be tips. We need to get people back in the marketplace. We hope you helped us out. Mr. Chairman, welcome to us. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your time.
Gentleman from Texas yields back. Chair recognizes the ranking member of our Capital Markets Subcommittee, Mr. Sherman of California, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, first I want to commend you for looking to improve the data on which you base your monetary policy decisions. Up until now, we've relied on survey data as a substantial part of that, and increasingly Americans just don't voluntarily answer survey questions. I want to commend you for declaring your independence. We saw what happens in Argentina, Venezuela, and most notably Turkey when federal central bank independence is eroded. I would say ironically that had your predecessor caved to Trump and lowered interest rates below what economics would call for, we would have much higher inflation today, and that would have been bad for Americans. It would have been absolutely terrible for the Republican Party. So the independent, your agency has saved Donald Trump from himself. And finally, I would say don't rely on this distinction between the Cook and the Slaughter cases. The idea that every congressionally created independent agency isn't independent except yours, you don't want to be relying on that. The distinctions the court makes between your agency and every other agency are rather weak historically. Our capital markets support our business expansion and our economy. Money market funds are an important part of that, buying short-term commercial paper from corporations. Our payment system is designed to meet the needs of honest Americans. That's why we have an anti-money laundering, know your customer rule that makes it a bad system for drug dealers, sanctions evaders, et cetera. There's a rival
Keep
to
listening,
these
Pam.
institutions,
Be right back.
and that is a cryptocurrency, which literally means hidden money,
Really?
and is designed to, and then we have in particularly stable coins, which are just like a money market fund, except you earn zero interest, and everything is hidden. Now, the Federal Reserve established liquidity facilities to support money market funds in the last crisis. Will the Federal Reserve support cryptocurrency or stable coins if they face a run-on from investors?
So, Congressman, thank you for mentioning many of those issues. We talked about a lot of them in your office, so I appreciate it. I still have the scars from the 2008 financial crisis.
We all do.
I still have the scars from the extraordinary efforts that my colleagues and I, under Chairman Bernanke's leadership, had to do. That is not something we want to repeat.
Can you assure us
that we need are
that
to
you
try
will
to mitigate
not
that.
be bailing out stablecoin and cryptocurrency?
So I don't want to, I can be more broadly than that. We do not want to be in the bailout business, full stop.
But your predecessor did provide a liquidity function for money market funds. If, God forbid, we faced a similar circumstance in the crypto world, would you bail them out?
So I want to be very clear. We're going to do everything we can to mitigate those sorts of extraordinary risks. If and when they were to come in the next 4 years, we want to be in a position we're not bailing out anybody, including crypto.
You're not really answering the question. Obviously, everybody prefers our economy works well. And I'm certainly concerned with giving non-banks direct access to the payment system, and this Kraken filing with the Kansas City Fed is concerning, but I want to move on to Basel III. Your predecessor said that the capital requirements for banks in 2019 were about right. The current reproposal substantially raises those capital requirements. Were capital requirements about right in 2019, or should they be higher than that today?
So the good news is we have a proposed capital rule that's out for comment. I'm quite interested in getting the reports and the comments on that, and I look forward to reviewing those and making a judgment. I would say, as a first principle, strong capital ratios, strong liquidity ratios, strong supervision, and strong market discipline, they're all of a piece to ensure we don't find ourselves in a world where there's unsafe or unsound institutions.
We, of course, want strong limits. On the other hand, if you go overboard, you hurt economic growth and hurt the economy. I hope in that review process you'll look at low-income housing tax credits, where you've already moved from 400% to 100%. It should be closer to 20%. These are very stable assets.
Gentleman's time has expired.
And my time has expired.
Appreciate you, Mr. Sherman. The chair recognizes the chair of our subcommittee on financial institutions, the distinguished gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Barr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Warsh, congratulations on your confirmation and swearing in as the 17th Chairman of the Federal Reserve. I am grateful for your commitment to reforming the Fed, and that appreciation is surpassed only by our shared love for Kentucky thoroughbreds and your love of the great sport of horse racing. Let me just ask you, first of all, since you're swearing in over 7 weeks ago, things seem quite a bit different over at the Fed. A few examples: elimination of forward guidance, abstaining from the dot plot, creation of these 5 specialized task forces, and maybe most impressively, taking accountability. Instead of blaming inflation on the pandemic or supply chain interruptions or tariffs or the Strait of Hormuz, you are saying that inflation is always and every time the result of the Fed supporting printing too much money. Tell me, Mr. Warsh, you appear to be quite different from your predecessors. How are you different?
So I've known 5 of my predecessors. I've learned particular lessons from each of them. I can only be my own man. I served before at the Fed for about 5.5 years under Chairman Bernanke, and I learned a lot of things then. But you're right. In 6 weeks, we have caused, I think, a sea change in new thinking, the beginning of a set of reforms that are going to be put in place across at least 5 dimensions in monetary policy. And it's a broader discussion about reforms that will be forthcoming in everything we do, including supervision and regulation, where there's already been a good start, in payments and the rest. We made a lot of progress in 6 weeks, but I think it's important to use this opportunity wisely. The 63 months of inflation above target has been an unfair burden and has been a tax on the American people and businesses. We plan on getting rid of that tax. If that means we need a regime change in policy and we need new consideration of practices, some of which have been working, some of which haven't, that's what we aim to do, and we're just getting started.
Well, I appreciate your commitment to being different. Let's talk about overhauling Fed communications. This from a Wall Street Journal editorial on June 15th. They write, "Few innovations since 2008 have been as counterproductive as the adoption of forward guidance as a policy tool. The constant yammering, long policy statements, press conferences after every FOMC meeting, nonstop speeches by Fed officials, and above all, the quarterly summary of economic projections has exposed how little the Fed understands about the economy and trapped officials in errant policies." Chairman Warsh, why is it important to do away with the dot plot and end, once and for all, forward guidance?
Well, Congressman, I've made no secret, probably over the last 15 years, of my views on communications. I think when central bankers speak like I am before you, it's either one under obligation or in this case under obligation and purpose, which is to share a set of new reforms so that American households and businesses might say to themselves, this is a regime change in policy. We're only beginning it. I'm keenly interested in the views of these 5 task forces, and ultimately these are decisions that are going to be made jointly. The best of the Fed's traditions are to work collegially, and I've really been quite impressed how open-minded my colleagues have been to take it up, specifically in communications. If we were to share with you our every passing thought, I worry not that there's anything wrong with us, but we're human. And if we were to give you my projection today about what we'll do when we meet in 2 weeks, what we'll do over the course of the year, that we then find ourselves sort of taking information that's consistent with our priors and rejecting information that's inconsistent. It's not the way we want to do things. We want to get policy right. And I think being somewhat more circumspect in our communications, at least for me, is a better way of calling balls and strikes.
Finally, thanks for your commitment on dealing with this mission creep. In recent years, the Fed has concerned itself with matters outside of its dual mandate, including diversity, equity, inclusion, climate change, and the like. That's why the Fed's joining the network of the greening of the financial system distracted the Fed from the very important job of price stability. How will you keep the Fed from rejoining the network for the greening of the financial system or veering into these peripheral and distracting matters that go beyond the statutory remit of the Fed?
by being very clear of our obligations. You told us that our job is full employment and price stability. You gave us plenty of other hard work to do. We'll have a series of reforms outside of monetary policy. Our plate is full. We will not be wandering into other areas, I can assure you, Congressman.
Thank you. I yield back. The gentleman from New York, the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. Meeks, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And congratulations, Mr. Chairman. Let me just jump into this, because in your testimony, you talked about the Federal Reserve's, and I quote, rightful independence in the conduct of monetary policy, which is good. Now, as the Chairman Hill has indicated, I also do some foreign affairs work, and I'm very concerned about what's taking place in the Strait of Hormuz and rising cost of gas, because we know that when those prices go up at the pump, it gives higher transportation and energy cost, and they work their way through the economy, generally making groceries higher and household goods, et cetera. So it depends upon handling it. So if the administration's handling of the conflict with Iran contributes to another inflationary shock, will you make the decision you believe is in the best interest of the American people and the American economy in that rightful independent stance?
Congressman, that is always our commitment, to make the best decision we can, consistent with the remit and our understanding of the world. And as I said to the chairman at the outset, we'll deliver price stability.
So, and that's, still based upon what we've seen from the president thus far. Now, I just want to be clear, make sure that, because I got to be clear on this, that if the president publicly pressures you to pursue a different course than the one you believe is in the economic data supports, will you follow the president's wishes or follow the data?
My commitment to you is to follow the law and follow the data, follow our very best judgment.
And that's even if he publicly criticizes you for doing it. If you decide this is the way to go, this is what the data shows, and he publicly criticizes you and tells you how disappointed he's in you and all of that, will you still do what the data tells you to do?
I will, Congressman.
You ready for that?
I'm ready to follow the law, and I'm ready for the Fed to deliver on the expansive remit that you gave us. I'll make only one other note. We have a wide lens. We're interested in what's happening in the war. We're interested in what's happening in military conflicts around. We have to take that all in, but then we have to shut the door and make our very best decision. That's what we're going to do in a couple of weeks, and that's what we'll do in the remainder of my tenure.
Thank you. So now I want you to know that I support innovation, but I also believe that the Federal Reserve has a responsibility to protect the integrity of our payment system from political pressure and short-term enthusiasm. And I believe that the administration has made expanding access to fintech and digital asset firms a clear priority of his, but the Federal Reserve has long evaluated access to its payment infrastructure based on safety and soundness, operational resilience, and effective risk management, and the stability of the financial system. Not politics, not political priorities. So, can you, and what I should say this also, because what I'm concerned about is that there are firms that's connected to our nation's payment infrastructure that must have robust cybersecurity, fraud prevention, compliance, and operational controls, because failures can undermine public confidence in the financial system and leave consumers exposed to significant harm. So, my question is, can you commit that decisions about access to the Federal Reserve's payment rails will remain grounded solely in the Fed's independent assessment of systemic risk, safety, and soundness, and not political direction?
We're going to keep politics out of the Fed. We're going to stay focused on the responsibilities you've given us. And I think you highlight something very important. This new technology revolution, which is hitting the Federal Reserve and the economy, provides huge opportunities. The United States can lead in payments. Our economy can be the strongest in the world and improve its growth rate, but it's not without risks, and we at the Fed are going to strike the right balance between the challenges and the opportunities in payments and more broadly.
Let me just ask this, I got 28 seconds, but What objective standards must any firm satisfy before you conclude that the benefits of innovation outweigh the risks to consumers and the broader financial system?
I like the way you think. A benefit cost test is a good test for economists like us, and if the benefits exceed the cost, then that's the kind of policy, procedure, and objective we want to pursue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the chair of our Capital Markets Subcommittee, Ann Wagner of Missouri. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Chairman Warsh, and congratulations to you. My work on the Capital Markets Subcommittee as chairman has been focused on giving the American people and our small businesses more options and access to our markets, giving the everyday investor and the local employer better opportunities to grow their financial future and kind of on their own terms, I'd say. Under the previous administration, we saw a heavy-handed regulatory approach that aimed to strip risk out of our markets entirely. And time after time, the Biden-Harris administration pushed policies that limited financial freedom and stifled growth. Our capital markets are, as we all know, the envy of the world, and that is because we allow Americans to weigh risk and reward for themselves and make the financial decisions that are best for them and their families. Chairman Warsh, at a high level, how do you view the Fed's role relative to the financial system, both as a central bank and as a bank regulator? And I guess what I mean is, should the Fed try to engineer all risk out of our economic system, or should it act as a prudent observer that only intervenes when truly necessary?
What did I miss?
Congressman, it's a leading question, which I can answer with we need to strike the right balance. We are not trying to take risks out of markets in normal times. The economic growth that I mentioned to your colleague just a moment ago comes about because of a certain dynamism in our financial markets, which comes from a dynamism in the real economy. That isn't created by the Federal Reserve, but we can be a foundation with clear, steady policies, delivering on the remit that you gave us, so that the American spirit and American economic growth can continue to be the envy of the world.
Something on the top of mind for myself and certainly for my constituents in Missouri's 2nd Congressional District is the state of the economy, including the cost of living, job growth, and interest rates. Though it is often characterized as being tasked with a dual mandate, the Fed, in fact, has multiple statutory mandates, including stable prices, maximum employment, moderate long-term interest rates, and financial stability. When the Fed leans into one of these goals, sir, it can create ripple effects on the others, forcing a balancing act between competing priorities. Chairman Warsh, how do you weigh these different mandates and the trade-offs between them?
So I'm a little different than some in the economics profession on that, Congressman. I do not think we have a cruel choice between stable prices and full employment. I think the mandate that you and Congress gave us are entirely consistent. If we can ensure stable prices, the American economy can thrive, businesses can hire more employees, and the dynamic economic engine we talked about can continue to be the envy of the world. I don't think we have to run a balancing test. I don't think it's an either-or proposition. We're in the business of doing what we can to ensure financial stability over a business cycle and financial cycle, and we're always in the business of ensuring stable prices and full employment. At different times, our focus, our lens has to turn to one of those priorities, but I think they're entirely consistent with each other.
Which leads to my next point here. There are some who believe, Chairman Warsh, that the Fed should be used as an everything regulator, where instead of acting as an observer of markets, the Fed attempts to actively manage them beyond its statutory responsibility. Chairman Warsh, how does this mission creep affect the Fed's reputation? And should the Fed take actions beyond those specifically authorized in federal law?
We should follow the law. There is a tendency when circumstances get tough for any regulatory agency, any agency to go to the edge of their authorities, but that's when politics enter the door. My objective, the objective of my colleagues is to keep politics out, and the way we do that is we steer clear of things that we aren't authorized to do.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
My time's expired, and I think that's the answer we're looking for. I yield back.
The chairman recognizes the ranking member of our Subcommittee on Digital Assets, Mr. Lynch of Massachusetts, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Chairman Warsh. Good to see you. My congratulations. I was pleased to see that in your opening remarks you spoke to the issue of artificial intelligence. And as the ranking member on AI and crypto, I was just curious to try to tease some more of your thoughts out on that. Not only in the financial services context, but AI in general. I mean, in the past, the Federal Reserve has been able to identify risks of impact to the financial system, but also in a wider context as well. And I wonder if you'd share some of your concerns about that. And I guess I'd like to know, under your leadership, what will be the Fed's approach on AI and how you protect the system from some of the risks that may be attendant to the adoption of AI.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. We talked about this a bit in your office, and I appreciate the time. This is perhaps the most significant change in our economy in my adult lifetime. I take the new investments in intelligence, in some sense, to be one where we have to recognize it's a huge opportunity, but it also comes with risks and challenges. It is not the job of the central bank to provide or be certain of what the consequences are over the next 12 or 24 months. But we recognize that the United States is likely to be a big winner. The United States is at the forefront of these technologies. Both the human capital and the capital provided from investors are happening here. So the efficient frontier of these technologies are happening in the United States. This is a benefit broadly to our economy. But I don't want to sound overly complacent about it. These technologies also offer threats when they find their way into adversaries' hands. The infrastructure at the Federal Reserve, the infrastructure at our banks, large and small, they must feel new pressure as people are looking to use these technologies to do harm. So these technologies can be used for good and for harm. Over the long term, I think the U.S. is the winner. Over the long term, I think there is a material improvement in productivity, which should have a material improvement ultimately in wages and the strength of the economy. But the long term it can be quite far out, and we've got to monitor things month by month, quarter by quarter as we get there.
Yeah, the thing that troubles me is every time we talk about AI, I hear about this race, and it's us against China, or it's us against South Korea, or countries in the EU. The problem with that thinking is that in this race, and we're seeing the velocity of change is enormous. It's exceeding obviously our ability to regulate AI. At the end of the day, I don't see the United States as the winner. I don't see China as the winner. I see artificial superintelligence as the winner. That's where we're rushing along this course, and at the end of the day, we're creating either us, and it doesn't matter whether the creator of artificial superintelligence is a good guy or a bad guy, or a good gal or a bad gal.
Oh, wow.
That superintelligence itself will be the entity that we have to confront. And I just worry about the broader impact of what's going on right now. There's tremendous resources, as you know, being poured into AI. I just hope that the course of regulation does not meet the same fate that
the regulation of crypto did, where the crypto industry spent close to $250 million up here on Capitol Hill, and they got the bill they wanted. If that happens with AI, we are in serious existential trouble, not only in this country, but in this world. And I do believe that the Fed, your position, has influence, has the ability to seek out those dangers that others may not identify. And I just ask you to please consider your role and the resources that you have, that maybe you can put a task force together to look at the broader implications of the adoption of AI. They can't even show us, they can't even explain some of the things that they're using right now. The explainability gap is enormous, but I welcome you. I wish you the best. I really do. I wish you the best for all of us.
Gentleman's time has expired.
I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, the Vice Chairman of our Financial Institutions Subcommittee. Mr. Loudermilk, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Walsh, welcome. Thank you for being here, and Godspeed with the position you now have, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
First, I want to talk about Operation Choke Point. As you are fully aware, Operation Choke Point 2.0 involved partisan actors at the Fed using, quote, reputation risk as a means to target and debank firms and individuals in the digital asset ecosystem. The energy industry and really anyone that partisan actors at the Fed believed unworthy of a bank account or loan. This was especially egregious given the fact that the Fed does not have a statutory authority from Congress to supervise for reputation risk. While I'm happy that reputation risk has been wiped from the Fed's guidance to examiners, can you please tell us what steps the Fed can take to durably ensure that statutory silence is never again abused by partisan actors to attempt through the Fed what they cannot make through law in Congress, and also what actions that you may be taking?
Yeah, so thank you, Congressman. Reputational risk has been removed from the dashboard that supervisors and regulators will have anything to do with. My view is that being a good supervisor and regulator is tough business, and we don't need to make it harder by bringing politics into it. Vice Chair Bowman has begun a series of reforms before I arrived in this, and I think you're going to find in the coming quarters and years we're going to continue to reform and refine our regulatory system so that we can have a safer and sounder financial system, and I'll add a more competitive one too.
All right, thank you for that, and we appreciate your work in that area. The Fed currently holds a considerable share of federal debt and has for almost 2 decades now. With a ready buyer and low interest rates, it's not surprising that Congress has been incentivized to run up large and growing deficits over the same time frame. You've spoken before about the Fed's role here and the threat of monetary dominance and fiscal dominance. How can the Fed get out of the business of underwriting Congress's fiscal irresponsibility?
One thing we can do is think hard about when we're going to be buying debt from the Treasury. This might not sound like perfect virtue, but when we have a crisis like in 2008 and 2020, my view is you created the central bank to take extraordinary actions. In more normal times, in a more normal business and financial cycle, fiscal policy needs to be a decision that you make with the administration. Fed should have nothing to do with it. I've set up a task force to focus on the balance sheet, to ask the question, first, what's the effect of the balance sheet on the conduct of monetary policy and ultimately inflation? Second, what are the pros and cons of different regimes? I'm not of the mistaken view we can go back to where we were when I arrived at the Fed in 2006, but I think there are several other sustainable equilibrium we can achieve. And the third question is equally important. It took us nearly 18 years to find our way into this balance sheet. We're holding a lot of long-term Treasury debt, long-term mortgage-backed securities. We won't be able to make changes overnight. Any changes that we make would be well deliberated, would be public, would be understood, and there'd be quite a bit of time before any of that was operationalized. I look forward to the recommendations of the task force, and I look forward to hearing from my colleagues around the FOMC as we contemplate alternatives.
Well, thank you for that. And what are your greatest concerns with regard to the threat of monetary dominance?
Yeah, so you have a different job than we do. The independence that many of your colleagues have spoke about this morning is a political and economic decision to give us the pen on interest rates, to let us be the deciders of monetary policy. I've always taken that as part of a bargain. You're giving us independence in that, and my judgment is we should be staying out of fiscal policy. We shouldn't be weighing in, no matter how tempting it might be, either directly by buying assets that have some flavor of fiscal policy, or by opining on subjects that really isn't our business. We're going to try to stick in our lane at the Federal Reserve. We've been good at that for the last 6 weeks, but there's always a temptation to wander in other areas. I'm going to try to be reserved in my comments on fiscal policy with you and your colleagues. That's your job, it's not mine.
Well, thank you for those answers. They're very thorough and very refreshing to hear. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Houston, Texas, Mr. Green, who is a ranking member of our subcommittee on oversight and investigations. Mr. Green.
Over here, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the ranking member as well. And I welcome you to the committee, Mr. Chairman, but I would also say to you that I will pray for you. And I'll pray for you because many of the questions that have been predicated today hinge upon a belief that you will sanction the president's desires. It is thought among the general public that you're in the position you're in because the president could not have the influence that he wanted to have with the prior chair, and he believes he can have it with you. So I hope that you will stand firm and honor your commitments that you're making, though some of them are not firm commitments, as I understood your language. You indicated that you're interested in war. I appreciate this, but I believe you should also be interested in speculative bubbles. My assumption is that you are. Are you interested in bubbles, speculative bubbles, Mr. Chairman?
We've got a wide lens. We spend a lot of time thinking about what's happening.
I'm going to take that as a yes. Now, given that you're interested in speculative bubbles, let's just talk about a bubble that occurred. President Trump's meme coin, $ Trump, profited an average of $1.74 million per day over his first year. $1.74 million per day. This amounted to approximately $636 million in total royalties and licensing fees generated at its launch. While this was happening, during that same period of time, nearly 1 million investors lost a combined $3.8 billion. This is because that meme coin lost value, dropped precipitously in value. It was a bubble, by the way. It is nothing. Anybody who's listening to me, if you've invested in a meme coin, you've invested in nothing. Zero. In a righteous world, it would be illegal. But given the Secretary of the Treasury that we have currently, it is not. And that's very unfortunate. SEC, the Secretary of the SEC. It is not.
There's no secretary for the SEC.
I think that we should concern ourselves with these speculative bubbles.
Oh, this guy. Chair of the SEC, Mr.
Whether you
Green.
like it or not, you have to concern yourself with it because when you lower interest rates, you lower the rates such that there's more capital available for people to use for speculative reasons. So you have to be concerned about it whether you want to or not, because you don't want to see a speculative bubble. Can I have your assurance that you will be concerned about these speculative bubbles, Mr. Chairman?
So, Congressman, we want a resilient, strong, safe financial system, and we are looking at financial markets and we're looking at the real economy to make sure we deliver on what we can. Some of these other subjects are really more in your purview and responsibility than
they're in my purview. Excuse me for interrupting, but I have to. They're in my purview, but only because I choose to have them in my purview, and I make an issue of them. I have to vote on them. But they're in your purview, too, because you decide whether the rates go up or down. And if you lower them, then people can engage in these speculative bubbles, such as the Trump meme coin, and they can lose a lot of money. Losing billions of dollars while the president makes millions on a daily basis. This is the epitome of ridiculosity. At some point, we all have to take a stand, Mr. Chairman. This is going to be your opportunity. You're going to have to take a stand at some point because this president is interested in making money. He puts money ahead of the people of this country. The people of the United States of America are secondary when it comes to the president. They may even be tertiary or quaternary, but they're not first. And at some point, you're going to have to make a tough decision as it relates to this president. Look, I'm not going to prejudge you. I'm going to assume that given your statements and the latitude that the Supreme Court has given you, that you'll make the right decision. But you're going to have to be concerned about a speculative bubble, especially as it relates to crypto. This is something that we'll all have to address. I thank you very much.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the Vice Chairman of our full committee, Mr. Heisinger of Michigan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Warsh, congratulations. I join many of my colleagues in seeing you there as a very positive thing. In late 2021 and 2022, as has been referenced by a few others, the Fed had recognized inflation was not transitory. I'm reminded of actually a hearing we had where we had then Secretary Yellen, former Fed Chair Yellen, sitting next to the then current Fed Chairman. And when I brought up the question about whether it was transitory, they did not have the same answer. And it was interesting seeing how that lag, and it sort of played into the fear that many of us had that there had been more to this foot dragging coming out of the Biden administration. The quick question is, while the appropriate speed of a response depends on what is driving inflation, I think you would certainly agree. I'm curious your view of how the Fed should make that judgment and act quickly once it does, because I think, as has been pointed out, there was a lag.
So, Congressman, I appreciate the question. We only look to the past for lessons learned. We're not trying to relitigate the decisions that are made of our predecessors, but the reforms that I've already announced in communications, the task forces that have been established, are an attempt to make the conduct of monetary policy better, swifter, more sound, so we can deliver price stability. Our number one objective is to get policy right, and my judgment, as I said to one of your colleagues before, is that demands an open mind. That means not pre-committing to decisions before we take it up inside the four walls of the Federal Reserve. And so you'll hear from me a lot less forward guidance and a lot of listening. Generally, as a practice, what we're going to try to do, especially at the beginning, is deeper, more serious discussions among us, fewer pronouncements.
So I appreciate you don't want to relitigate the past, but I do think, as we all know, we also learn from history. And during the previous administration, the Fed took some pretty major regulatory actions, some within its statutory authority, and in my view, maybe excessive, but others that were clearly beyond what Congress had really authorized. And everyone agrees a safe and sound banking system is essential to monetary policy, the economy, and the American people. But when the Fed exercises exceeds its statutory
Today
authority,
we got some green.
Reinterpretations or interprets old laws to claim new powers, that to me is mission creep. Can you assure us that future bank regulatory proposals will respect the important procedural guardrails established by the Administrative Procedure Act? The APA has been in many ways trampled, I believe. which often received only nominal consideration under the previous administration. How are you going to handle this?
So we're going to follow the law just as you say. You've established a set of laws. There's a set of regulations by which changes in supervision and regulation, changes in guidance can be made. We intend to follow them with an objective, as you mentioned, of a safe, sound, and again, I'll add, competitive banking system. There's a huge strength for the United States, and our banking system is stronger and more resilient than most around the global economy.
Expound a little bit about your views of the importance of a banking system to the American people and the benefits to them of a Fed sticking to the authorities that Congress has given it, and rather than going far afield.
Yeah, so we've got to keep politics out of the Fed. Politics can find their way into the Fed through any of the range of powers that you've given us. Our supervisors and regulators have a lot of authority over the thousands of banks that are regulated in the United States. Explicit authority and also authority when they knock on the door and they ask a series of questions. One of the great strengths of the U.S. economy is the diversity of institutions we have in the banking business. Most of the G20 counterparts we have, they have a handful of banks. They're implicitly backed by their government. One of the untold strengths of our economy is the diversity of our banking system. We've got regulators that need to ensure that the regulation and supervision are tailored to what happens in those institutions. One size fits all might work for other countries. It doesn't work in the U.S. And the vision I have, Congressman, is liquidity and credit that comes up from the real economy through the banks.
Thank you.
And gets aggregated, not top-down liquidity
Gentleman's
provided by the Federal
time has
Reserve.
expired.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the ranking member of our subcommittee on housing and
BTC
insurance, Mr. Cleaver. You're recognized
Green.
for 5 minutes.
Thank you,
Let's
Mr.
go.
Chairman. Let me first, before I ask any questions, to express my personal appreciation for you and
Oh, wait.
Waters,
Wait.
for
Green candle
allowing
detected.
and
Green
giving
candle detected.
my partner, Mike
5
Flood,
minute
and I
candle.
the opportunity to
Green detected.
go out and deal with this housing issue that, frankly, I think is going to add a whole
BTC
new
moving.
dimension to our ability as a federal government to increase this human need for housing. So thank you very much. I appreciate, and I know he does as well, all of the freedom that you guys gave us. Thank you, Madam Ranking Member. Mr. Chairman, congratulations for your new step and your
Stop by.
career and for being here. I appreciated having a good conversation with you prior to this hearing. And I'm sure that you're not surprised that there's a great deal of interest in independence. And in theology, you said there are 4 endowments of the human species, and one of them is independence, that we have an independent will. And I'm interested in a declaration of independence, if you will. Wax eloquent on your view about the independence
Donald
of the
J.
Federal
Trump
Reserve.
is about to be speaking bilateral meeting
The
right now.
independence of the Federal Reserve is sacrosanct. Part of the reason for the
I'm ready for
Fed's
that.
power comes not just from a printing press, though it can be useful from time to time. It comes from our credibility to make the best choices we can, consistent with the law that you've written for us. And that credibility is bolstered if we are and are perceived to be independent. And so that's a commitment I can make to you, because that's the way we can best do our job.
Well, thank you very much. Independence is a big deal in the real world, and then certainly with the Federal Reserve. But I also have to say that there is a terror of the unknown, part of who
Be
we
right
are.
back.
And the oldest and strongest of the human emotions is fear. It's almost the first thing we have. even babies will jump because there's a fear of falling. Even they may not even realize they're in the world, but there is this fear. And I'm not sure what to call this, maybe AI anxiety, but I clearly have it. And it's only, my youngest son is an actor, and it would be inappropriate for me to tell everybody here to watch Sweet Magnolias on Netflix. However, I am concerned, he's concerned, as many of the people in that business, about what AI can do to that whole profession. But there's this fear that at some point that AI may become more intelligent than human beings, and then put us in a situation where we become obsolete. Do you have, as the chair of the Federal Reserve, concerns about AI that you wish we knew and would address?
Thank you, Congressman. This is the most exciting opportunity, but with it comes the kinds of risks and challenges that you highlight. We at the central bank need to look at these with a view towards what do they mean for our mandate? What does it mean for our expectations of inflation over the next couple of years and beyond? What's it mean for employment? You told us that's our job. And so we have to look at artificial intelligence and the surge of technology with open eyes about it. I must admit that part of these challenges, I see huge amounts of talent and thinking inside at the Federal Reserve, but I wanted to bring in some outsiders to share a view. So I've created a task force on productivity and jobs to help us think about that connection. We're not outsourcing anything. We're ultimately
Gentleman's time has expired.
We're ultimately going to make these decisions. But American ingenuity has found its way into artificial intelligence, and it's an exciting time, but one that we're not complacent about.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the chair of our subcommittee on digital assets, Mr. Stile of Wisconsin. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Warsh, thank you for being with us today. A year ago on Saturday, the Genius Act was signed into law. And with that, a series of deadlines for rules to be promulgated began, and the clock began to tick. You came into your job confirmed approximately 2 months ago. The deadline for the Fed to promulgate rules is this Saturday. Will the Fed meet that deadline?
Well, it's a fair and open question. I have been corrected. I've not been in the job 6 weeks, but 7. We're racing to put that out by this deadline. I'll just add one other thing, Congressman, without taking too much of your time. I think rulemakings from the bank regulators are best when we have a family fight between and among us, so that there would be one proposed rulemaking for comment. It might not be exactly true this time, but that's my objective, that we'd be coordinated in issuing our rulemakings at the same moment.
I appreciate that. I think from this body, I think there's a huge opportunity with stablecoin, in particular, to make sure that consumers are protected. That was one of the drivers of us passing that legislation. There's a lot of work to be done. You're new in your new role with the Fed, but we would like to be updated if, in fact, that deadline is not made. And then, in fact, when those rules will be promulgated, we're all anxiously awaiting. So appreciate your attention to that. Let me shift gears. There's been a lot of talk about AI. Obviously, as any new technology, as you have said, brings forward opportunity, but also risk. One argument, of course, is the labor market could collapse. We heard that offered by a couple of our colleagues. Of course, as we look back at other technological cycles in the United States, we've actually seen standards of living increasing. Jevons paradox tells us that actually as technological cycles come through, we have opportunities for greater employment, in particular if we get the rules of the road right, as in many ways the United States has in previous technological cycles. How are you analyzing your role with full employment, in particular as it relates to this next technological wave?
If this cycle, Congressman, is like the previous positive technology shocks, the U.S. will be richer, will be more productive, there'll be more labor, there'll be more wages, there'll be more compensation. That is if this follows prior trends. This technology shock is likely more significant. This is probably the biggest change in my adult lifetime because it's not just the creation of a new widget. What it is, it's changing the method of innovation and the speed of innovation, and I can't think of a country on earth as well positioned to take advantage of it. So that's on the one hand, but on the other hand, it can lead to disruption. My own best guess is that the advent of the technology will be augmenting existing work, that employees that were there will be more productive. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't believe in the lump of labor fallacy. All the jobs that are there have already been created, and the technology will remove some. Well, it might be disruptive in the near term, but it'll create a lot of other jobs. Just to give one example from history, and then I'll close. Who knew at the creation of the internet that the internet would create 1.5 million Uber and Lyft drivers? I certainly didn't. So I want to be very open-minded about the job-producing elements of it. But we have a day job, and it's to deliver on price stability and full employment. I've asked this outside task force of a few incredible experts to think hard about it over various time horizons, and we'll keep our eye on making sure we deliver in every one of those time horizons to ensure stable prices and full employment as best we can.
Thank you for that. I think there really is optimism, although there is downside risk. And I think one of the imperative aspects here is that we get the rules of the road right so that the innovation development is occurring in the United States of America and not offshore. One of my big concerns is how the Biden administration looked at emerging technologies in the financial services space, was that they were pushing that innovation development offshore rather than encouraging that here in the United States of America. With 30 seconds left, a lot has been said on the positive numbers that came out today. How does that shape your short-term and long-term outlook with the final 25 seconds?
So it's one data point. The reason I create a task force on data is I don't want to overread or cherry-pick data. There might be some that look at this morning's data and say, oh, mission accomplished, everything is swell. That is not my view.
Cognizant of the time, appreciate you being here today, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the ranking member of our subcommittee on financial institutions, Dr. Foster from Illinois. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, congratulations, and I hope that you cherish the scars from surviving the financial crisis that we both suffered through 20 years ago. I entered Congress and the Financial Services Committee in March of 2008, where I was right in the front row there, about 2 meters from Ben Bernanke and Hank Paulson, as they came to Congress to ask for a $700 billion bailout, watching the sweat drip down Hank Paulson's forehead. So I hope you don't have to go through that. But you know, one of the Fed's most important roles outside of monetary policy is the operation of the central bank swap lines. And these, as you know, were absolutely crucial in preventing the global financial crisis from becoming a global depression. And I think, to my mind, remains the major reason why the U.S. dollar is the world's indispensable reserve currency, in an area where, by the way, the Chinese are trying to become increasingly competitive. And so the problem, of course, is that right now we have in the White House an occupant who sees his every power as a means of rewarding his friends and punishing his enemies, domestic and foreign. We saw that an example in the Argentine bailout, where he implemented swap lines using the Treasury's Exchange Stabilization Fund. I think he pretty much maxed it out. But to reward one of his MAGA allies internationally with a $20 billion loan at well below market rates, or probably they couldn't get a loan from anyone at that point. And so the question that I have, that when you and the FOMC are operating those lines, particularly in times of crisis, do you see yourself as an agent of the president or as an independent actor?
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate the question. The swap lines that we put in place in the 2008 financial crisis, like you, I think, played a remarkable benefit in trying to mitigate the risks for the U.S. economy. And it reinforced that the dollar is the dominant currency in the world. Now, my judgment as central bank chief is to let the dollar policy be discussed by the Treasury Secretary and leave that to him. But historically speaking, I think the swap lines played a major role. The dollar liquidity swap lines that the Fed has put in place are about the conduct of monetary policy. So those are independent, but I just want to distinguish one thing. The Treasury has separate authorities and can use the Exchange Stabilization Fund for swap lines that are unrelated to our powers and responsibilities.
But the Fed's the big dog in swap lines. I mean, the ESF is, I think it's somewhere a little bit north of 20 billion, I think, is the most that they could deploy, which they did, much, I have to say, not to the benefit of U.S. farmers that I represent, but anyway, he decided to bail out his friend in Argentina. But that was the Treasury, and that was different. So the question is, what happens if there is a crisis and you get a call from the president and says, I got this friend that I want you to bail out or punish by politically allocating those swap lines? Is there an independence there that we have to protect as well?
So the independence in the conduct of monetary policy and everything that comes along with it is independent. But just to go back to the 2008 financial crisis, when all that happened, as you'll recall, the Treasury Secretary and the Fed Chairman, they often had to work in tandem. It's hard to distinguish in crisis times, separate from more benign times, exactly where those roles and responsibilities are. And when we put in those swap lines, when I was a governor at the Federal Reserve, I remember frequent discussions between the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. We have our independent authority, but I don't want to leave you with the impression that in 2008 or 9 we did that without a discussion with the Treasury.
Okay, well, I just, be very careful of that because you are going to be coming under extreme pressure. Now, let's say I applaud all of your focus on data, which we talked about when we talked, and in particular your need for better real-time data. The question of whether we could have picked up the inflation earlier with more leading and real-time indicators, I think is a very valid point. And I applaud you for having your committees investigate that. But does this interest also go into real-time regulatory information as well, which I think is really going to be crucial in a world where there's 24/7 banking operations? Banks and financial institutions can get in trouble fast. And so are you also going to be looking at the need and benefit for regulatory data on a faster time scale?
Absolutely. I've only been here for 7 weeks. The focus in those first 7 weeks, I must admit, is making sure that monetary policy gets back on track. But many of these lessons learned, like in data, how do we make real-time decisions isn't just as monetary policymakers, it's as supervisors and regulators. The world, as the discussion about AI suggested, the world's moving faster, the world's accelerating, and the Fed has to move with that speed.
Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the chairman of our Subcommittee on National Security, Mr. Davidson from Ohio, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Hill. Chairman Warsh, thank you for your testimony today and, frankly, for leading at the Federal Reserve. The Constitution gives Congress the responsibility for monetary policy, and since 1913, that's fallen to the Federal Reserve. And, a lot of people say, well, what did we create when we created the Federal Reserve? And the fight over the shape of our monetary policy is as old as Alexander Hamilton versus Andrew Jackson. So I think a lot of my constituents wonder, what happened to the purchasing power of their dollar? So could you share with us what you consider to be the definition of sound money, and what's the state of that today?
The discussion we had in your office was a lot of economic history about the first and central bank of the United States. I'm gratified that this is our third central bank in the United States, and it's more than 100 years old, and hopefully we've learned some lessons. One of those lessons is ensuring that we are as focused, at least as focused on the real economy as we are the financial assets and what's happening on Wall Street. This committee had long committed to a 2% inflation target. That is our resolution. That's what I'm here to say and double down on. But as we discussed privately, I'll say publicly, my broader definition of price stability is a change in prices such that households and businesses don't have to worry about it, don't have to think about it. And the test today about whether inflation is too high is represented by this committee. Inflation is the dominant set of questions because it matters to households and businesses. I'd like the change in prices to be such that no one's talking about it. That was a definition from the Volcker era, and I dare say the Greenspan era. It should suggest to you that as I sit here today, this Fed will deliver price stability consistent with what we have been saying for several years, which is inflation shall be delivered at a level of 2%. that broader price stability objective is still one in the back of my mind, and we'll see whether there's further reforms to be had.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying, because, if you measure it by what people are talking about, they know that the affordability isn't there, they know the purchasing power isn't there, and, whether you put it in number like 2% or whatever, you look at, for the long run, it's been significantly higher than 2%. But it seems like one of the biggest roles of the Fed is to prevent deflation. And if you're going to have a number where the mean is 2%, and you've got a long period of time where you've had it well above 2%, you'd have to have some significant periods of time where it would be below that. But I wish you the best in your challenges, because my constituents are counting on us to get this right. It truly is one of the most consequential things for our country. Sound money is truly essential to defending freedom. So I think the stakes are really high. One of the things that we look at is the connection to the way that the market functions. The Federal Reserve covers massive fiscal deficits, and they certainly do that when they're the purchaser of treasuries. They load up their own balance sheet. In some ways, you don't get a price signal. What's the real 10-year? What's the real 30-year? Well, when the buyer is the Federal Reserve, you don't know whether they're creating a higher rate or preventing a higher rate from happening because it distorts the market. And we also talked about, in this regulatory role, there's a sort of bridge between the Federal Reserve as a regulator and a monetary policy role. So I wonder, when we think about what we created with this version of the Federal Reserve, do you consider the Federal Reserve subject to executive authority? I mean, when there are executive orders that are issued, let's say just relating to the regulatory side, not monetary. I get some of the concerns on steering monetary policy. Presidents have always had an opinion on that. Well, if you put out a regulatory framework and the executive order relates to the regulatory structure of the Federal Reserve, is the Federal Reserve subject to executive orders?
Yeah. So it's a good question. Let me say a word, if I can, in 53 seconds about that, and go back, if I can, to say something about what you were talking about in setting prices rather than taking prices. First, as you know, I'm prepared to do everything I can to ensure the independent conduct of monetary policy. You can hear from all sorts of people, but we're going to call it the best we see it. On regulatory and supervisory policy, I do think it works best when the bank regulators, who you've all given authority to, when we can work in concert. I tend to not like it when there's a regulatory arbitrage, if an institution's trying to choose between whether to be regulated by the OCC, the FDIC, or the Fed. So I'm encouraged to have a robust discussion with my colleagues at other bank regulators about what we think is the right public policy. But if we think that the right public policy is different than theirs, we'll put it out for comment and notice, perhaps even as early as Saturday.
Gentleman's time has
Thank you. My time has expired, and I yield back.
Chair recognizes the ranking member of our subcommittee on national security, Ms. Beatty, also of Ohio, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, and to you, Chairman Warsh. Thank you for being here today. And let me first start out by thanking you for reaching out to have a dialogue with me, and I look forward to making that happen. Also, I certainly appreciate your response, particularly to Congressman Meeks and Congressman Foster, on you holding firm on independence and that you would protect the data and the law. That goes a long way with me. I want to start with a question about the housing market. As you are aware, the Federal Reserve monetary policy heavily influences the United States housing market through setting of benchmark interest rates that directly dictate the mortgage rates and housing affordability. Many homeowners were able to access mortgages at historically low interest rates during the pandemic, but rates have more than doubled since then, and I'm concerned about the impact this is having on first-time home buyers and minority borrowers in particular, who are also facing high home rates and insurance policies. Homeowners are exiting pandemic-related forbearances and also are struggling to enter into affordable repayment plans due to the high interest rates, which in many cases could push them into foreclosures. Now, I understand that the Fed can't increase housing supply or prevent foreclosures directly, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the impact of rate hikes on the housing market, especially for those more vulnerable homebuyers. And certainly, we have a new amazing housing bill, the 21st century. I have to get that plug in, that I have 6 bills in that. So now I yield to you.
Thank you, Congressman. We stay out of housing policy, and as the debate that's been had in this room suggests, you all have a lot to say about what housing policy is going to be. But I don't want to suggest that we don't touch it. We don't target housing, we don't target any particular sector, but the decisions we make have a big effect on housing.
Yes.
And housing plays a huge role in most households' family budgets, in their savings. So we recognize the importance of it.
And rate hikes. Correct.
Absolutely. We, as I said in my opening statement, I think broadly about the conduct of policy today. I sounded quite optimistic about what was happening in manufacturing, what was happening in output. But you heard me say a somewhat more cautious note about housing. And I think that's in part because monetary policy, when rates were cut to extremely low levels, provided what was thought of as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get the first house. I would prefer a set of monetary policies that are not boom and bust, that don't just make one generation more fortunate about being able to afford their first home than the next. So what we can do in monetary policy is try to be clear about our objectives, deliver price stability in the context of full employment, and not react overtly to any data that happens one day or the next.
But
we have an effect on long-term rates, and we take it very seriously.
And you'll be sensitive to the issues that I'm bringing up. Okay, in my last minute, let me now turn to fraud and scams, which is one of the top concerns that we've been dealing with lately in this committee and my subcommittee. As you know, payment frauds, including scams, often involve multiple institution and payment methods, and no single agency or entity can solve it alone. What specific role do you believe the Fed Reserve should play in helping build a more coordinated cross-sector approach to frauds and scams?
Yeah, so it's another fair one. The Financial Stability Oversight Council, which the Fed is a key member of, fraud is on that agenda. That committee is run by the Treasury Secretary under the law, but the Fed has equities there, and the Fed needs to ensure that, especially with this new generation of technologies, that the American people don't lose confidence in our payment system, don't lose confidence in the banking sector that we regulate. So we do have an important role to play there as well.
I'm gonna interrupt only because I have a few seconds later. I'm glad you mentioned this new generation. I've received feedback that better information sharing between financial institutions and online platforms is key. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Real-time information between lender and borrower is a way to make credit more available to more hardworking Americans.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rose. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Hill, and thanks to Ranking Member Waters for holding the important hearing. And Chair Warsh, thank you for being here with us today. Chairman Warsh, prices for agricultural inputs have, after experiencing a spike during the Biden inflation that began in 2021, have remained stubbornly high. Needless to say, families are also in my district were themselves hit by the rise in food prices that began under Biden and your predecessor in 2021. And grocery prices remain persistently high. This strains household budgets and makes it harder for people in my district to put food on the table while also paying for all of life's other necessities that are also more expensive following that inflationary period. We saw in the 1980s how hard it is to deal with persistent inflated prices and the difficult decisions it can place on the Fed to get and keep them under control. Can you please tell us what is the Fed doing and what do you intend to do to ensure that a resurgence of inflation does not materialize?
So that's job number one. We cannot, I don't want to overstate, we cannot have a direct, immediate effect on short-term particular.
All right, my friends, we'll come back to this one if it's still going live right now. President Donald J. Trump is live.
Reserves, they have tremendous potential wealth, and they have tremendous wealth, not only potential. But he's done in a short period of time. He's changed that country so much, especially toward their thinking about the United States. And we have partnerships. Chris was just saying we have tremendous oil partnerships all of a sudden being formed over the last short period of time. And I guess you're going to be announcing them this week or next week. But massive, among the largest. So they have done a fantastic job over the last very short period of time. But they have a great leader, the new prime minister. He's a great leader. I think he's going to be there for a long period of time. And it's great to have you at the White House. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And he's a young man. He's young and he's handsome, which I don't like. I'm not happy about it.
شكرا جزيلا. لقد عقدنا اجتماعا جيدا وقد دعوته إلى وجبة الغداء، وهذا لم يكن ضمن البرنامج والجدول الذي اتفقنا عليه، لكن هنالك كيمياء عظيمة بيننا وبينهم. رئيس الوزراء يقوم بعمل رائع. أنا لم يتوقع أحد أنه سيفوز في هذه الانتخابات، لكن المرشح المضاد له كان شخص لم يعجبني ولم تكن لديه آراء جيدة تجاه أمريكا، لكن كان من المهم جدا لي أن تفوزوا أنتم في هذه الانتخابات، وأنتم تقومون بعمل رائع جدا. والآن لدينا فائز جديد لم تكن حظوظه كبيرة لكنه مع ذلك نجح في هذه الانتخابات. هو شرف عظيم بالنسبة لي أن أستضيف دولة رئيس الوزراء هنا في البيت الأبيض. هو محارب عظيم، وهو أيضا من المعجبين بأمريكا والولايات المتحدة. العراق طبعا دولة غنية لديها كثير من الاحتياطات النفطية، وهي دولة مليئة بالثروات، وفي وقت قصير تمكنتم من القيام بالكثير وتغيير، على الأقل تغيير شعور العراقيين تجاه أمريكا. وكما قال كريس وزير النفط وأشار إلى ذلك أن هنالك صفقات تجارية كبيرة في مجال النفط سوف يتم الإعلان عنها هذا الأسبوع. أنتم تقومون بعمل رائع وقمتم بعمل رائع خلال وقت قصير. رئيس الوزراء طبعا هو أيضا قائد عظيم، وأعتقد أنكم ستخدمون في هذا المنصب لمدة طويلة. طبعا أنتم في مقتبل العمر أنتم شاب أيضا ووسيم، وهذا طبعا لا يعجبني، لكن مع ذلك يشرفني أن أستضيفكم هنا.
Please, Mr. President. Thank you. أشكر حفاوة الاستقبال إلى فخامة الرئيس دونالد ترامب.
Thank you for the warm welcome by His Excellency President Trump.
وهذه هي زيارتي الأولى
This is my first visit
إلى الولايات المتحدة
to the
الأمريكية.
United States of America.
فهذه الزيارة لم تكن زيارة عابرة.
This visit was not just like any visit.
وإنما زيارة إعلان شراكة اقتصادية.
Rather, it's an announcement of economic partnership.
تحدثت مع فخامة الرئيس.
Where I talked to His Excellency.
30/9 سوف تخرج القوات
By
الأمريكية.
the 30th of September, the U.S. forces will be out of Iraq.
وسوف تدخل الشركات الأمريكية.
While the U.S. companies will be inside Iraq.
ودائما تخلق العلاقة المجتمعية هي الشراكة الاقتصادية وليس العسكرية.
While the social relations is about like economy, it's not like about like military relations.
أنقل تحياتي.
I would convey my greetings
من أقدم حضارة في العالم.
The oldest civilization in the world.
إلى أكبر قلب اقتصادي في العالم وتكنولوجيا.
Economic and technology heart in the world.
وأكرر شكري إلى فخامة الرئيس على حفاوة الاستقبال.
My thanks to His Excellency the President for the warm welcome.
Well, thank you very much.
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the Prime Minister.
Go ahead,
please. To you, sir. If you allow me, I'm going to ask in Arabic. سمو سعادة رئيس الوزراء، هناك طلب أمريكي لحصر سلاح الميليشيات بيد الدولة لكبح جماح إيران وعدم مهاجمة دول الجوار. هل هذه أهداف يمكن أن تتحقق قبل سبتمبر؟ And Mr. President, if I may.
Who are you with?
I'm with Al Arabiya. I cover the Middle East. I'm a White House correspondent, but I'm referring to them.
Okay.
Sir, is the military attack on Iran, is this a strategy to bring them back to the table? Or is it to degrade them so the regime will eventually fall?
Well, we don't think we need the military there anymore. It's a very a big operation. And what we do have is the oil companies are all going in now, and they're doing partnerships with Iraq, and they're getting along very well. The relationship is a whole big relationship where we don't need the military there. We're there to help them. We're there to protect them if need be, but we don't think that's going to be necessary. And their primary, I consider an opponent. They might have considered a friend, but I consider that an opponent was Iran, was a big burden on Iraq because they were the bully of the Middle East, as you know. And we were just talking about that, but they're not going to have that problem anymore because Iran has been very much destabilized, and really their military power is just a tiny fraction of what it was just 4 months ago. So they're not going to have that problem. I think that it's really, in a sense, it's given them freedom to do what they have to do. And I think that's one of the reasons that our oil companies are going in there at levels that have never been seen before. So. You want to answer?
شكرا جزيلا على السؤال.
Thank you for your question.
ابتداء في منهاج الحكومي
According to the program of the government,
هو حصر السلاح بيد الدولة.
is to restrict the possession of weapons to the state.
وهذه نقطة أساسية.
And this is a basic point.
ولدي قرار بها غير قابل للخيار.
And this is like a decision, it's not an option.
تم استلام
We received
أسلحة كثيرة من قبل بعض الفصائل.
weapons by different factions.
واللي يسلم سلاحه
And he whoever surrender his weapon
ويتحول إلى جهة سياسية ومدنية.
turned into like a political or civilian.
من ناحيتنا سيتم التعاون معه.
We will cooperate with them.
بعد 30/9
After the 30th of September,
لا حاجة لوجود أي فصائل.
there's no any need for the presence of any faction.
لكون الفصائل
Because factions
هي حاجة وليس مهنة.
is a need, it's not a profession.
وماكو مبرر لبقائهم بعد 30/9.
No any justification for their existence after the 30th of September.
إن شاء الله نهاية هذا العام أو بداية العام
So hopefully
القادم
by the end of this year or by the beginning of the next year,
سوف نعلن أكبر مؤتمر السيادة الوطني.
the sovereignty conference is the biggest conference in the region.
قرار العراق بيد العراقيين.
The Iraqi decision is by the hand of the Iraqis only.
وقواتنا الأمنية قادرة على حماية أراضيها.
And our security forces are capable of protecting their borders.
بعد 30/9
After the 30th of September,
لا نسمح لأي جهة تحمل سلاح خارج
we
نطاق الدولة.
never accept for any entity to carry weapons outside the control of a state.
Thank you, President Trump. I have two questions. I was wondering if you could explain your changing thinking on the Strait of Hormuz, applying a 20% fee. How did you get to the decision you just announced?
So when I put that out yesterday, because we've been doing that for many, many years, it was never fair to me that we would be guarding the strait when we basically don't take anything, we don't need the oil at all. And it wasn't important for us, but it was important for allies. It was important for people that we get along with very well, including the major Gulf state countries. So I put it out yesterday. I thought it was good. I was called by different people, different countries, kings and emirs and all of the people that we all know and we all love, and they've been very strong partners. And they said, we'd love to do it a different way. We'd love to invest in the United States with billions and billions of dollars and continue our record setting, because there's never been a time like this with the United States, with the factories, with the plants, with everything else. And we would like to invest tremendously in the United States as opposed to charging a fee. And I like that actually, because I don't think anybody should be able to charge a fee for the strait or for any other strait relationship in terms of other sections of the world. I don't think anybody should be really in that position. But we were doing it as a reimbursement. The Gulf states are going to invest a tremendous amount of money into the United States, and that was very satisfactory to me. I think it's actually much better.
If I could also ask, are you aware of why the FBI is looking into Senator Graham's death? Have you gotten any updates on why they were at his home?
Well, I don't know why, because I think, he had a problem. His father had a very similar problem, as you know. It's very unique. At first I heard it was clogged arteries, because he did have clogged arteries. He had a problem with that. He was, I wish he took better care of himself. I say, you can solve that problem, but what happened is actually something that's very hard to detect. It was not related to any blockage. It was a totally different thing. And supposedly, and I've watched all the medical reports, I've had the doctors from the White House come in and explain what happened. And this is something that is almost undetectable. And if it happens, there's not much you can do about it. It sounds unfortunate, but there's not much you can do about it. If you look at his his father died of the same thing at about the same age. So there was not much. They say it's almost undetectable. You can detect it by if you have a very bad back. That's a sign. It's a bad sign. So if anybody has a bad back, it's a pretty rough thing to think about. But the fact that's one of the primary signs. And he would tell me he had a bad back. But little did anyone realize it was for that. So, and when that bursts, which it did, it burst. There's not much. So I don't see a lot of evil there. I know there's all sorts of conspiracy theories going along, and I don't think the FBI. I think the FBI is wasting their time if they're doing that.
Just on the prior question, the Hormuz Strait toll idea for you, that's dead now. That's completely gone.
No, I just told you. You have Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait, primarily, and then others. I spoke to all of them, and they would love to invest more money in the United States at record amounts, and that would be very acceptable. And this way, there's no fee. I don't like the concept of a fee, but at the same time, it's not fair that we're protecting this strait for the entire world, for China and everyone. I don't mind protecting it for China. I don't mind protecting it for anybody, but it's unfair that we're not in somehow compensated. And we've been doing this for many years. It's bothered me 25 years ago. It bothered me. During my first term, I was doing things like you have to invest in the United States. But by doing it that way, there's no fee. They're investing and they're getting a return on their money, and it's good. But they're going to be making massive investments into the United States, and I like that much better.
President
Can I ask you a bit about the meeting you had today, whether you discussed OPEC? There's been some reporting that Iraq is pushing for changes to OPEC, a larger share, and even that they might consider leaving it over.
The gentleman right here, because here he is. Would you like to know about it?
Are you considering, Mr. Prime Minister, leaving OPEC, or are you pushing for changes within it? And Mr. President, would you support his,
well, I support him.
For changes?
I supported him very early I endorsed him, something I rarely do, but I've had great successes endorsing. We just had Colombia, which was a big one. Argentina was a big one. We had many. I've endorsed, I think everybody I've endorsed from a foreign standpoint, they just win.
Yeah.
And, I've been hearing great things. I'm a student of a lot of history, and I do know a lot about the history of Iraq, and I've watched what was happening in Iraq with the elections, and I put a very strong endorsement out because I was very unhappy with the man that was supposed to win the election. And this great gentleman, I think he's going to end up being a great leader. He won, so I'm very happy about that. As far as OPEC, that's his decision, and you might ask him that question.
لا أوبك إحنا أحد البلدان المؤسسة لها.
We are one of the countries that established OPEC.
لكن نريد حقنا وحصة منصفة للعراق.
We need like a fair share for Iraq.
العراق حارب داعش.
Iraq fought ISIS.
والإرهاب بأجمعه.
And terrorism at all.
وبدعم الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية.
Support of the United States of America.
وهذه الحرب مع داعش.
This fight with ISIS.
كلفتنا نفقات كبيرة.
It cost us like huge amounts of money.
ودمرت البنى التحتية العراقية.
Destroyed the Iraqi infrastructure.
مقدار الضرر اللي أصاب العراق.
The damage that really was against Iraq.
أكثر من 400 مليار دولار.
Is more than $400 billion.
لليوم بعض العراقيين مدن مدمرة.
Until today, like some Iraqi cities are totally destroyed.
ويسكنون في مخيمات.
They like live in camps.
والآن لدي خطة أعيدهم إلى دورهم.
I have a plan to get them back to their homes.
نريد حصة منصفة للعراق.
We need a fair share.
لا أكثر من ذلك.
We need a fair share.
Because if you remember, even though I was a civilian and had no thought of running for president, I get a disproportionate amount of publicity, as you probably heard. And I used to say, don't go into Iraq. Don't attack Iraq. Frankly, they attacked the wrong country. And they did a lot of damage. Yes.
Thank you. Given how the Iranians have been behaving, do you have any regrets about lifting the naval blockade or giving the sanctions waivers?
No. I gave them a chance. I wanted to give them a chance at making a deal. We had a deal 2 days ago. It was done. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't do it. They didn't like something about the deal. They couldn't do it. And they shot first, and that was a big mistake that they shot first because we have been knocking the hell out of them. They're very difficult people. 47 years we put up with it. The SS Cole, you go back all the way, thousands of people, thousands of Americans were killed, a lot of soldiers were killed. A lot of soldiers are walking around or not walking around. I mean, they've been so badly injured, the arms, the legs, the face, with the Soleimani, with the bomb. They call it the roadside bomb. Most people call it the roadside bomb. It's a disaster. And I killed him in my first administration. Had I not, it might be a different story today. He was a mad genius. He was probably a madman, but he was a general, and he had total control over the country. And I actually think the leaders of Iran were afraid of Soleimani. But I killed him. And by the way, with him went a very bad person also. They happened to be meeting each other at the airport. And a very bad person from Iraq happened to be a leader of Iraq, happened to be killed in that same incident. So I don't know if I did you a favor or not. I've never asked you that question. You probably would know better than me. But no, I think that what we've done to Iran is we've taken away almost all of their military capability. Explain. He has to hear that. Go ahead.
هو بيسأل عن قاسم سليماني وانه كيف تم قتله على يده في الولايه الاولى له في عندما كان رئيسا للولايات المتحده. فالفكره هو طبعا كان شخص ذكي جدا وعبقري لكنه كان شرير بنهايه المطاف. في حادث استهداف وقتل عراقي كان في صحبته، كانوا يلتقوا في مطار في العراق في بغداد. فهو بيسأل هل هو كان عملكم خدمة أم لا؟ ما هي النظرة بالنسبة لمقتل سليماني؟
أنا في ذاك الوقت لا أمارس السياسة.
At that time I was not in politics.
وأريد كل جيتي نتحدث عن المستقبل إيش راح نسوي.
In my visit, I'd like to talk about the future.
شبعانين من ماضينا القديم.
Because now we are fed up with the past.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Kurdish here. Mr. President, thank you for your time. Last year in May, the Prime Minister of Kurdistan region, Masroor Barzani, signed about $110 billion in energy deals with U.S. companies here in Washington, D.C.
Right.
Mr. President, if Baghdad and Erbil work together better, that investment could grow. What is your message and advice to the leaders in Baghdad and Erbil to work together? Why I'm asking this question? Because you are our miracle makers, Mr. President.
I love this question. It's my favorite question so far, by far. Thank you very much for the question. Look, Baghdad, I think, and I and this country, we're going to make some tremendous music together. We haven't been dealing very much over the last 4 or 5 years with the previous administration. Iraq has tremendous potential because of their oil and because of other things, but because of their oil. And we're going to be doing a lot of deals. We're going to create a lot of jobs for both countries, and we're going to be taking out a lot of oil. A lot of oil is coming out, and the American companies are doing it. Mostly American companies now. They don't want to do business with others. They want to do business with America, and that's good. And that's one of the reasons that I felt so strongly that this was going to be a great prime minister, and I fought for that.
How would you describe your relationship with Kurdistan regional government at this time? Because Prime Minister yesterday had a statement and fully support you.
كيف ترون علاقتكم مع كردستان اليوم لأنه السيد كرئيس وزراء؟
أنا أنظر للعراق جسد.
I look at Iraq as a body.
وكل رقعة جغرافية في العراق هي عضو من جسدي.
Each part of Iraq is part of my own body.
فما راح أميز عضو عن آخر.
So I would never distinguish between any organ.
ولا يمكن أن أقطع جزء من جسدي بيدي.
And I cannot cut off any part of any organ from my own body.
كردستان جزء مهم من العراق.
Kurdistan is such an important part of Iraq.
لا يختلفون عن البصرة وعن المحافظات الأخرى.
No different than Basra and other provinces.
But because such nice things were said about him, that means he likes the man that said those nice things.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I have a question for you, and I have a question for Prime Minister. The first question, Mr. Prime Minister, why did you choose the United States as your first trip abroad? And what steps, concrete steps, do you take when you go back to Iraq to make sure that the agreements you are reaching in Washington, D.C. implemented?
أنا ورثت بلد ثقيل.
I inherited such a heavy burden country.
وأنا كماجستير مالية.
I have a master's degree in finance.
حللت الوضع الاقتصادي للبلد.
I analyzed the economic situation of the country.
هذا الثقل يراد معي شريك استراتيجي يحمله معي.
This burden, I need such a strategic partner to really lift this burden.
وأهم شريك استراتيجي في العالم.
The most important strategic partnership in
هو الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية.
is the United States of America.
فلم تكن زيارتي عابرة أو من فراغ.
It wasn't just like any visit or came out of.
ولم تكن عاطفية وإنما عقلية.
It's not emotional. It's about mind.
Inflation slowed to 3.5%.
Yeah, thank you.
Will this trend hold now that strikes on Iran?
I think so. I think it's going to, inflation's down. We inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. They say 48 years. It was the worst in the history of our country from Biden, Sleepy Joe. He might have been sleepy, but boy, he could create inflation like nobody. And I inherited that, and I got blamed for it, and it's not my fault. We are putting it to sleep. And we've done a great job, Scott and Howard and Marco and even Pete, because he's watching his dollars, right? But they've done a fantastic job. We've all done a fantastic job. So we had the worst inflation in history, and the history of our country. I mean, we had months where it was 9 and 10%, and now we have a report just came out. It was just released. Thank you for bringing it up, but the report was incredible. Inflation is way down. That means prices are coming way down, and we're doing a great job. Remember that for the midterms. I say to that camera, remember that, because nobody else could do it. Prices are way down. Prices are coming way down, and we're going to bring them much lower yet.
President Trump, people around the world and around the nation are anticipating your big announcement on Thursday night regarding election machines and integrity. Can you give us sort of a sneak peek about what to expect and tell the
Well,
audience
I'd rather
in America?
save it. It will concern that subject, and we'll have a couple of other things to
Why
say
should people
also.
watch, though?
But I'd rather save it, but it's really big news. It's really, really big news.
Clarity Act.
And our country has to shape up.
Imagine.
But that's what we're going to be talking about Thursday is it doesn't get bigger, because without free and fair elections, you don't have a country. We'll be discussing other things too, but it's going to be a very big announcement. Yeah.
Mr. President, your administration pushed hard to shape Iraq's leadership and tied U.S. support to disarming Iran-backed factions. With the September 15th deadline weeks away, what happening in Baghdad misses it? And does the U.S. troops withdrawal from Kurdistan region still proceed on schedule?
I think everything's on schedule. We have a great, here we are. I mean, we're right now, I even called for a lunch that wasn't scheduled, okay? So in that way, but no, we usually, I don't think I've ever done that where we didn't have lunch. I said, let's have lunch. You know why? Because I like them.
At least a lunch.
I like them. So I think that's all going to work out very well. Yeah.
Sir, do you want this Russia sanctions bill signed within the next week or two, and will you sign it?
Well, I know that Lindsay wanted it very badly. I think they may be adding Iran to it. They're going to add Iran, which is a very big thing if they did that. They may add Hezbollah too. Just put them if you do business with Hezbollah. So we're looking at that, but they're seriously thinking, and this is in honor of Lindsay. This was his thing. He wanted this more than any other thing. You know how he felt. And there's a good chance that it gets done, but they'd like to add Iran, and they'd like to add Hezbollah to it. That's what I'm hearing. So.
And if that means secondary sanctions on China, India, Europe...
Well, we'll have to look. That hasn't been discussed.
Mr. President, my question for you, the Prime Minister, Ali Zaidi, has launched a campaign to bring weapons held by militia under the control of the state. How does your administration support him to accomplish this vision? My second question, how do you envision the future relations between Kurdistan region and Iraq?
I think everything is going to work out. I think the Middle East, believe it or not, is coming together. We're getting rid of the bully of the Middle East. Iran was the bully of the Middle East. They bullied Iraq. They bullied every country. They were There was fear all over the Middle East with other countries. I understand that, but there was fear. But there's no fear anymore because their military capability has been knocked to hell, and there's no fear. I think the Middle East is coming together like it's never come together before. You can't have a dominant factor like Iran that would kill 52,000 protesters. You know, they killed, nobody likes talking about that. I don't like talking about it. They killed 52,000 protesters. So the bottom line, all regions, I believe, are coming together. And I think this is going to be one of the great leaders right here. It's going to be one of the great leaders in the Middle East. Go ahead, please. Just explain that, please.
أعتقد أنه الآن الشرق الأوسط قد تم ترتيب أوضاعه لأنه إيران ضعفت الآن وهي كانت تتنمر على الجميع، فالآن انتهى هذا الدور ولا يمكن أن نسمح لقوة واحدة أو بلد واحد بأن يهيمن على كامل المنطقة. يعني الناس يغفلون عن أن إيران كذلك الحكومة الإيرانية قتلت 52 ألف متظاهر في إيران. طبعا نحن لا يمكننا نحن لا نتحدث عن ذلك، وأنا نفسي يعني أنا الرئيس أكره أن أفكر في هذا الأمر، لكنهم كذلك. والآن انتهى هذا الدور ولم يعد لإيران أي دور في التنمر على أي من جيرانهم.
I think we could go into this for a long time, and the bottom line is that we have a fantastic relationship with many countries now. I just came back from NATO. Many of you were there, and you saw how that worked out. It was a phenomenal. It was a love fest, to be honest, and they love the United States. They even like me, but they love the United States. And we're going to cut costs there by hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe. But the NATO event was incredible. Today's event is incredible. This is a potentially really great country, and many people would say it's a great country. We're helping it. We want to help it. We have a fantastic relationship with the new Prime Minister. He's a strong person. He's a very brilliant guy. He's very much acknowledged, or he couldn't have won that election. That was a highly competitive election, and he went out and won, and it's a big story. I mean, it's a big, big story. And I just want to say that the United States has never done better. We're doing well. You know, more people are working today in the United States than at any time in history. We have more things being built. Factories, plants, AI, automobile plants are being built at record numbers, more than we've ever had ever before. The tariffs have been used very judiciously and properly, and companies are pouring in, and countries are pouring into this country to build factories, because when they build them, they have no tariffs. And we have numbers $19.2 trillion. As an example, under Biden, it was less than $1 trillion for 4 years. We're at $19.2 trillion for 12 months. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Our relationship with Iraq is, I would say, it went from being not so good to being outstanding. And we're going to have a long-term relationship with Iraq. We're going to have a long-term relationship with a man that will be a great leader. Mark my words. I knew what I was doing. This man is going to be a great leader in the Middle East, beyond Iraq. His influence is going to spread all throughout the Middle East, and we're very happy about it. And we're very happy to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
I don't think there's anything much else you can ask us. This is a very important meeting. It's something I've never done before. No lunch was scheduled. I said, let's have lunch. I've never done that before. Sometimes we'll have a lunch scheduled, but I've never done this, right, Susie? This is a first. So I have no idea what we're going to be eating, but it'll be fine. But we're doing it because we like the people that we're with. Thank you very much.
Oh my goodness. What a beauty. What a beauty. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up, and don't you know, pump it up. What's up? Guys, do not leave without signing up with the first link down below immediately, because I want you to get a piece of 5,000 XRP giveaway Link down below, guys. You know right now. Raise your hand if you're a BTCC trader, investor. Hope you are, because we are giving away a lot of money. You just saw what happened to XRP. You just saw what happened to XRP. So if you're one of those traders that I love you guys, well, check it out. Oscar Ramos, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm about to head out to eat something because I'm hungry. And sorry for stepping out because I got some people working here at the house. I'm always trying to improve the house, as always. I don't know. Once you pass 30 and you're a homeowner, that's where all the money goes. I want to say absolute thank you so much to Ghost, to Chipper, to TJ, to JV, to everybody, Eduardo, all my great admins, of course. You guys are incredible. It feels like a good day, There's we got to be grateful, really, really, really grateful. So super excited. Make sure you follow us. The links are down below. Get to know us on Telegram. We got many Telegram free channels. Our Discord page, our Patreon page, our Inner Circle page, our website is there. We got a bunch of different things that you can go ahead and make some pretty good money too, and kickstart your trading, your stuff. Tacos. Why everybody says tacos, guys? I'm Mexican, but I'm not that Mexican. I'm just kidding. I don't need tacos, and this is shocking for some, but I don't need tacos. I don't drink Coke. Like, I'm a boring guy because I really take care of my health, and every time I go out with my friends, they're like, oh, classic. This guy never eats anything. Anyway, I'm one of those. But my weight and my progress, my health is through the roof. It's through the roof. It's true. One of the things that one of the reasons why crypto is doing really well is because the Senate has 24 days to pass Clarity Act. I'll make a video later today explaining this and going through more into detail because we had Cynthia Lovins speaking about that. There's a Fox Business conversation, which I want to show you guys. So later today, I'm going to go ahead and take a break. That's the TJ. That's Daddy TJ. Daddy TJ. Hey, whatever Daddy TJ says, we do it. Cyber here too. Oh, I missed the stream. Well, Jay, no worries. We'll be here soon, and we got to continue. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys' support. I believe Fed Chair Kevin Warsh is still speaking, but I'm just tired. So it's been 2 hours. I think that's enough. That's more than enough. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for coming in. I hope you have a great day. God bless you all. The links are down below. Sign up and keep trading because, boy, we're doing good. All right? Have a good one, guys. And sorry about my hair. I was just chilling, having some kind of protein, and then I saw that he was already speaking. I'm like, oh boy. So we watched him for about an hour or so, and then jumped to Trump. Very happy that Trump is fine. He looks okay. He looks okay. Obviously, he's 80, so very happy for him. I wish him nothing but the best, right? Good health. It's crazy how a 70+ year old senator passes away so fast, so unexpected. And then Trump, he's 80 and he's still kicking, right? Very happy for him, and I hope we can enjoy Trump for the rest of his term, right? That'll be pretty cool. Well, guys, I'm very positive that we're gonna get Clarity Act this year, and if that's the case, well, you better be getting that dip because it's going to be euphoric. Euphoric. Mark my words. So buying the dip does help. Sign up and get 5,000 XRP. Peace. Trump is a young, vibrant man. Young? Thank you, guys. Have a good one.